today's video I'm going to show you a graveyard theme design that has a gradient in the background that's orange to black with little silhouettes of headstones and a spooky tree, and then in the front, in the foreground, there is a little headstone that comes away from the nail a bit, and behind it there is a zombie hand that can pretty much be hidden, and then it can pop out on either side or above it like a little surprise, hey look at that, somebody's escaping this grave. So I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to check out Helen's design. Her graveyard actually comes up off the nail as if the nail is the ground, and then all the headstones and stuff come off up above it, which is really cool. I hope you guys like this as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So to start out this design, we're going to begin with that background, and I'm going to sculpt it. That part is completely optional or up to you. This would be very easy to create as far as just like the same style. You could do it just with either gel polish or acrylic paints or airbrush or whatever it is. If you guys are all into airbrush, this I probably would actually recommend going airbrush for it, because creating that black to orange gradient would be super easy with an airbrush if you are fluent in that medium. But it's going to be orange fading up and kind of create a straight line across the tip, almost as if you're creating a nail bed for a French tip, and then fill in the tip with black. So it's got like this black fade to orange sharp line, black tip. So it's like the ground is that sharp line, is the ground line. And you can keep adding layers of orange to black and black to orange until you're happy with that little blend. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's going to be so much painting on top of it that as long as the gradient is, decent, then you can say, yep, I'm good with it. And then you can encapsulate this nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that it is nice and strong and to blend it out. Plus, when you're doing all of those different shapes in the background with acrylic like that, they don't necessarily get to have an apex in them, because you're not focused on structure, you're focused on design and color. So when you're sculpting that kind of thing, if you want to try to do it just all with colored acrylic, you have to add in that structure layer as far as a consideration. So it just gives you a little bit more to deal with and think about. So if you want to actually make it what I consider to be faster and easier, encapsulation is the way to go. But then with some black paint, I'm going to be doing all of the little details. So I started out with the fence line, and as you can see, it wasn't a straight line. It kind of was like down, up, down, up, down, up, like a little bit jagged like this. Poor fence is really, it's really going through the test of time. And then add the little different posts going down, and then I'm going to be doing the silhouettes of a couple different headstones, and you can do different shapes for these. And then off to the other side, I'm going to be doing the silhouette of my spooky tree. And to do a spooky tree, part of the key is to make your lines really wavy. So instead of doing like I've done autumnal trees that are like more of an elegant sort of a thing, if you want one to be spooky, the key is to give the lines just a little bit more of a wave to them. It's subtle, it's not a huge difference, but that somehow takes the tree from looking really pretty and fall and, or wintry to creepy and decrepit. So that's the little key for that. So just add all those little lines for your tree, fill them in with plenty little branches. You can kind of keep going with this, or you can stop whenever you want to, whenever you're happy with it, and then apply a layer of gel sealer over that background and cure it. So now in a nail form backing, we're going to sculpt our little gravestone, headstone, whatever you want to call it. And I'm using gray acrylic for this, but you could really switch it up and do different colors, because if you look at headstones, there's all different kinds of natural stone that they're made out of. Even though gray seems to be like the stereotype, you can stray from that if you want to get a little bit funky with it. So I'm going to sculpt my shape, and just like there's a bunch of different colors that you can choose from, there's a bunch of different shapes, so you can play around with that as well. And after I have that first shape done, then I'm going to sculpt 3 little extra parts. So those first 2 that are onto the sides that I'm working on right now, those are what I consider to be spacers. So those pieces are what's going to hold your headstone away from the nail, giving you the space behind it for your little creepy hand. So that way you have enough space behind the headstone for your hand to move around and to be comfortable and not get stuck. So, and that bottom piece is the bottom piece. So I'm going to glue those pieces all together. So I've got my little bit of nail glue, and I'm going to use my offset tweezers, which is like the best tool for making these little pieces. And I'm going to glue everything together. So just like so, it's basically like assembling a box. And then after I have all those, there was a whole bunch of little gaps and it wasn't really very secure. So I'm going to strengthen it, secure it, etc. with some more of my gray acrylic and just go around it and make sure that all of the pieces aren't going to fall off. This bottom piece especially. Did you guys see all the holes in there? Yeah, would not have held up very well whatsoever. So just make sure that all of that is nice and strong. and pat that out a little bit, and then we're going to apply some glue right around the bottom edge, and then glue that bad boy onto the nail, right at the tip of the nail, so it's like as close to the tip as you can. So then once that's glued down, you can secure it with some more acrylic, and then you're going to go through with your e-file and drill a hole right in the bottom of the headstone, or that bottom piece of the headstone, and then with either a darker or a lighter shade of gray, so it depends on whatever color you started with, or if you're not doing gray tones, if you're doing brown tones or whatever, you know, just a different shade of basically the same color, create a little outline or border around the very outside edge. And then with black, go through and outline that border. So with your black, try to make it as thin of a line as you possibly can. One thing I like to do when I'm trying to get very, very thin lines, I like to dilute my black paint with a little bit of water. And this is acrylic paint, not gel paint. You cannot dilute gel paint with water, so just keep that in mind. But then I'm going to write RIP across the front of my headstone, and then I'm going to write some dates underneath it. Now these dates are super teeny tiny, and if you don't feel confident or comfortable writing that small as to make it legible, then I would just skip that part, because the RIP really does get the job done and says what it needs to say. The dates are just like a bonus. And I would make up totally random dates, and I did mine a long time ago, a few centuries. So I have 1791 to 1856, and then apply a layer of matte top coat over all that painting, and then that part of the nail is done. So now on a nail form backing, we're going to be creating our little scary zombie hand. And to do this, I'm going to begin with a very tall triangle, or it's not, I guess, not exactly a triangle, but it's a tapered oval, I suppose, for the forearm and wrist of my little zombie hand. And then I'm going to create what's almost like a square, and this is going to be for the palm of the hand. And then after that, you can sculpt the thumb and the fingers. So as you could see, I don't know if you guys could see the shift in color between, like when I sculpted the arm and the palm and then the palm to the fingers, I let those set up completely. So I sculpted the little bits, and then I just set that piece of nail form backing to the side, and I worked on something else and I came back to it. The reason you want to do that is because if you don't let that acrylic set up, chances are you're going to mess it up while you're working around it. So for instance, while you're sculpting the fingers, you might gouge the palm, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that that isn't going to happen, and the work that you finished stays finished. And even within the hands, as you can see, or the fingers, I mean, I sculpted some fingers, and then I like skipped, and then I went back and I filled in that one that I missed. I didn't do the middle finger immediately, which just gives you that acrylic a little opportunity to set up before you start messing with it. Then I glue a piece of wire to the back of your little zombie hand. Make sure that that's nice and secure, and then strengthen it with some clear acrylic just around the wire and then up the fingers, because you don't want them to be so thin and delicate that they're going to break even while you're painting it. I've had that before where I've painted something and I've not painted it, or I've not secured it underneath, and even as I'm painting it, I break something because not necessarily just the weight of the paintbrush, but I bumped it or dropped it or something, and then I messed it up. So now I'm going to take some darker green paint, and I'm going to really add some very dramatic shadows on my hand. And I wanted this to almost be like a comic book style look to it, which gives you, I don't know if you guys know that comic book, kind of like pop art comic book style, where it's really dramatic shadows, really bright highlights, and no blending. So it's just like these blocking of color. So I've got that really dark, and then I'm going to take some brighter green, really bright chartreuse, and I'm going to highlight my hand. And then with some black, I'm going to do just a very few little lines here and there to add even more intense layers of color. So anything that I feel like needs to be a bit more defined is where I'm going to take that black. So it's just a little bit here and there, and then apply some matte top coat over your hand. And once that's dry, then you can slide the wire through the top of the headstone down through the hole in the bottom, cut off any extra wire if there is any, and then glue a glass seed bead to the bottom of that wire, so a little bit more nail glue, and then hold that bead on, and then there you go. That is it for this design. This one is, I'm going to say this for probably all my Halloween designs, but this one is one of my favorites. I love that little hand. It's such a surprise, and I'm so impressed by that hand for myself personally, because I try to avoid sculpting hands a lot because I think that they're a little bit more difficult for me. So I hope you like it. Please share recreations with me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll see you next time. Bye!